Happy Tuesday, everybody. Another video update on this week's blizzard and Arctic cold front moving through the eastern United States, and as well as a look ahead to what could potentially be coming after this front moves through for those areas that get impacted by this storm. May have maybe another system move through a little bit after Christmas. So, real quick, again, want to thank everybody for the support over this past week. I've been receiving a lot of views and I've been gaining some subscribers. So I appreciate that. And again, feel free to interact in the comment section. I love talking to you guys. Love seeing where my viewers are from and answering questions. So feel free to do any of that. We're going to do things a little different in today's video. I'm going to show you the Euro, and then I'm going to show you a lot of blend of models in terms of things like wind, temperature, temperature anomalies. And then we're actually going to go more in depth in a regional view. Now that we're getting closer, we can look a little closer at what we think radar will look like as this system moves through. So we'll go and start with the Euro on a national view before we get into those more localized regions. So actually, I talked about this in yesterday's video. This low pressure system that has moved through the southeast has been producing some pretty steady sleet and rain and even some snow in the Charlotte area as it's moving through the Carolinas right now. So that verified pretty well, actually. I'm proud of that. But, nice little token event for those areas that likely won't see any snow from the big system that moves through later on this week. So that's going to move out this evening. So if you're seeing snow or sleet in those areas now, congratulations. You were lucky enough to get some of that before it moves out going into tonight. So tomorrow, Wednesday, pretty quiet day relatively across the country. But this is whenever we do begin to see the system push in from Canada with this Arctic air, and some snow will begin to break out in the northern plains in the Dakotas and Minnesota. Moving forward, going into Thursday morning, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, the system really begins to move southward, and we see more snow break out across these regions. The trend in the models over the past 24 hours has been to move this further east. Over the weekend, we saw the super far west shift, and now we're seeing it move back further east. I talked about this in one of my videos late last week, actually, how we started with the super extreme track of something like this, and then we moved to something like this. Well, actually, we really moved to something like this at one point. And now we're seeing the models kind of do something more like this. So again, I talked about that a while ago, and that trend is actually kind of coming to fruition a bit. So if you're in one of those places like Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska, you've seen your chances of snow go down pretty considerably. I still think these areas will get snow, but it won't be nearly as robust as some of the model runs were showing over the past 48 to 24 hours. So again, this is going into Thursday morning, though. Snow breaks out in those regions, although less than originally expected. And then this front is going to begin to push further into the Midwest. And what you're going to see is low pressure develop down here at the southern end of the front. And another thing we have to watch out for is seeing if we can get more low pressure to develop further down in the Gulf that may try to then ride that front up and maybe produce a little bit more snow in certain areas that might not otherwise have received much. But we'll talk about that a little bit more whenever we get into the regional view. So again, going into Thursday, you're going to start to see rain break out here in the southeast as you're going to begin to get that southerly flow as the front approaches. And again, could see some thumping of snow or maybe even some ice in the mountains as this begins to push northward, especially into Virginia and West Virginia, Maryland, and up into Pennsylvania. Although I think even the North Carolina mountains have a chance at maybe a little bit of ice at onset here of precipitation. And that's going to begin to move up into the mid-Atlantic and New England going into Thursday night. And as that is happening, we're going to begin to get this low pressure to really start to crank up, likely over Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, in that area. And then moving into Friday morning, Thursday night, that low pressure is really going to begin to strengthen. And this is when we'll likely begin to see blizzard conditions across a pretty good chunk here of the Midwest, especially the state of Michigan. I think whenever you're getting that onshore flow off of Lake Michigan, I think this area is going to be most susceptible to blizzard conditions and heavy snowfall, even with the trends as of lately. But again, this is really going to get going. Going into Friday afternoon is probably going to be the worst of it for places like Michigan, Northern Ohio, and even lake effect regions of New York and Pennsylvania. While that's going on, though, really heavy downpours and very strong onshore flow here into New England, bringing in warm Atlantic air. And it's also going to be really windy there as well. So you're going to have blowing rain in those regions before maybe getting a little bit of snow on the back end as this pulls away going into Saturday on Christmas Eve. But behind that is going to be the super cold Arctic air that's going to begin to settle really across the entire eastern United States. And that comes with many problems, but a pretty big one that I think isn't really being talked about much is the chance of a flash freeze in a lot of these locations, especially even into the southeast, going into the mid Atlantic and New England. You're going to get all that torrential rain, and then very quickly the temperatures are going to plummet. Luckily, it will be windy, which will help to try to dry out some of these areas before the temperatures drop. But there will definitely be leftover water on roadways, so you're going to have to be very careful going into your Friday and Saturday, which I know are very traveled days this time of the year with the holidays. So just be super careful and mindful of that. And the temperatures will stay below freezing in a lot of these areas all day Friday and Saturday, well, especially Saturday. So it's not going to be one of those things where it's just the morning you have to worry about. You really have to be careful all day long. So another thing I want to talk about here is a lot of times we look at the specific temperatures, but just how unusual this cold front is compared to an average temperature that you would see in a lot of these regions. So the blue here obviously is way colder than average, and the red is warmer than average. So going into right now, already you're starting to see some of this cold air seep in from Canada, and already some places are close to 50 degrees lower than they normally would be this time of year. As we move this forward, going into tomorrow and Thursday, as this cold front really begins to spread in, you're really going to go through some drastic changes here in the eastern United States. A lot of areas are going to actually be above average going into their Thursday afternoon here through Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, and even down here into the deep south. Although we'll probably still be holding on to some cold air damming here into the Carolinas and Virginia. But as this approaches, I mean, look at this gradient. This really goes to show just how impressive this is. In Nashville, you could be 8 degrees, anywhere from 8 to 15 degrees above average going into your Thursday night. And then as you get just into Friday afternoon, you're nearly 30 degrees below normal. That is a very extreme shift, and this is going to begin and then settle over the entire eastern United States. This is Saturday morning. I mean, widespread 20 to 30 degrees below normal. Some places up in the plains, 40 to 50 degrees below their average temperature this time of year. So super impressive system there. And this is going to hang around really going through Christmas and even a little bit past Christmas. And we'll try to warm up going further into the new year. So again, very impressive in terms of a historical standpoint. So let's go ahead and look at the actual temperatures now that we've seen that how far they are below average. Same story with the other map in terms of timing here. You're going to really get that cold air to surge east and south going into your Friday. And look at this is, let's go one more click. Yeah, this is Saturday morning, so New Year's Eve morning. And this is not including wind chill. This is just temperatures. Wind chills are going to likely be pretty significantly below this. But you're getting sub-freezing temperatures pretty far south into Missouri, single digits as far south as Nashville, maybe even North Georgia, North Alabama could see some single digits out of this, and teens in the Carolinas, and moving up into Virginia and the deep south. And again, this is going to hold on for a while going into Christmas. We'll look at Christmas Day highs. A lot of areas are going to struggle to get above freezing, even as far south as Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia. So again, very strong cold front. It's one of those things that, as interesting as it is, you don't really want to play around with it. You want to be careful, make sure you take all your preparations, especially watch over if you have any elderly neighbors or family. Make sure that you're checking in on them during this entire event going into Christmas. So let's go and look at the wind gusts now. This will really help show those areas that will likely be seeing blizzard conditions, and even the areas that see rain are going to see really strong winds. So we'll have to watch out for power outages over a pretty large portion of the country. So again, going into Wednesday afternoon here, wind really picks up out into the Dakotas and the plains all the way from Texas north to the Canadian border. And this is really going to begin to blossom going into Thursday night into Friday. Anywhere from 35 to 45 mile an hour wind gusts through pretty much all of the plains. And that is going to then begin to shift east and engulf really the entire eastern half of the country. Up into the higher terrains of Vermont, New Hampshire, you can see wind gusts up into the 55, 60 mile an hour range. and widespread 40 to 45 mile an hour gusts over the area that low pressure is likely going to develop into Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, and even strong wind gusts further south into the deep south. As you can see, when this low pressure really cranks up Friday night, I mean, you're seeing gusts close to 60 mile an hour, and over the lakes, you're likely going to see hurricane force gusts. So, in these areas, like I talked about, especially here in Michigan, I mean, you're going to have heavy lake effect snow with winds, I mean, approaching gusts of 60, including, maybe Erie and up into Buffalo, all these areas that are normally susceptible to lake effect snow are really going to get it good from this. Going further out, these winds are going to continue before slowly dying down as they move up into Canada, going into Christmas Day. And by then, the wind should calm down pretty good for most areas. So let's go and look at snowfall now. And I should add, the past 3 maps we've looked at are the National Weather Service Splenda models. And we looked at the Euro in the beginning with the national view of precipitation. But this snowfall forecast from the National Weather Service Splenda models, again, snow breaks out going into Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, Wisconsin, going into Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Again, these numbers downtrended a little bit from yesterday's video, but this pretty much still a bullseye over Western Michigan, I should say. I think I've said Eastern Michigan, like the entire video, but Western Michigan. Again, very heavy snowfall in those areas, and likely even maybe some accumulating snow as far south as Tennessee, going into Nashville, and then mountain northwest flow from North Carolina, spreading all the way up into the Virginias and Pennsylvania. I still think definitely see flakes in this area of the South, likely not accumulating to a whole lot, but you could see maybe a quick inch in some areas that can get enough snow to fall. But either way, flakes definitely fly here, I think, in northern Mississippi, Alabama, and even portions of North Georgia. So looking at actual totals here, in some of these lake effect areas, I still think 2 feet is on the table, especially here in eastern Michigan. And, going into the Buffalo area and Erie area, maybe closer to a foot. In terms of further inland, sections of central Indiana and Ohio, I think anywhere from 4 to 8 inches is a pretty safe bet. I think half a foot is going to be pretty common to come by. And then further south into Kentucky, more of a maybe 1 to 3 inch event, and then 1 to 2 inches further south into Tennessee with a dusting further south from there. In terms of the mountains, again, northwest flow areas in North Carolina, anywhere from 1 to 3 inches, and then probably closer to 3 to 5 as you go up into West Virginia and Pennsylvania. All right, so now that we've looked at kind of the national stage, let's go ahead and look at more of an in-depth map at some of these areas, and we'll start here with the Midwest. And this is going to show precipitation. As you can see, going into let me bring this map down a little bit for you. Going into Wednesday night, snow breaks out across a big portion of these areas, including Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, and that will eventually begin to shift further east as this low pressure develops, and you get some pretty heavy snow here, anywhere from St. Louis up to Chicago, which could definitely drop a couple of inches pretty quickly. Then as that really ramps up going into Friday morning and Thursday night, you're going to really get some heavy snow on the back end. And something to note, again, a lot of these areas are going to start as rain here in Indiana and southern Illinois and into Ohio before changing over to that heavy snow going into Thursday night and Friday morning. And then again, really just heavy winds coming off of Lake Michigan here that are really going to enhance that lake effect snow. And by this point, you're looking at, potentially a sub 980 low. So the winds are really going to be howling at, near 60 mile an hour wind gusts are a pretty safe bet. So for this region, it begins to move out going into your Friday afternoon, besides some leftover lake effect in the usual areas. All right, let's go a little further south now into areas of Tennessee, Kentucky, and sections of the Deep South and Carolinas. All right, so once the system moves out of the Carolinas today, pretty clear going into Wednesday. It'll be a cold day, but nothing too out of the usual. What we will begin to see is rain start to develop here into the Carolinas going into Thursday morning, and that's going to lift northward into the Mid-Atlantic, which we will look at here on our next map. But again, low pressure begins to crank up. Snow as far south as Arkansas, southern Missouri, all the way up into Illinois and Indiana. Still dry in Tennessee and the deep south from Mississippi all the way over to Georgia and the Carolinas here, going into your Thursday afternoon. But that changes quickly going into Thursday night. Uh, Pretty heavy downpours will begin to move through and likely change over to snow on the backside. Here into Tennessee, I think you definitely have a pretty good shot with flurries further south into northern Mississippi, Alabama, and potentially even Georgia as this gets into early Friday morning. And as this front pushes through, temperature is going to drastically drop. So in a place like let's see, we'll go with Nashville here. You're likely going to be warmer Thursday night than you will be on the day Friday. So your high is likely going to occur at midnight in a place like Nashville or even Birmingham, Alabama, or Huntsville before it then gets colder throughout the day on Friday. This line then marches eastward into the Appalachians, which we will look at now. Okay, again, this area pretty quiet tomorrow on Wednesday. Thursday, rain comes back into the forecast here in the Carolinas. Nothing cold enough for snow or sleet like we have seen today, but likely some ice in the mountains as this pushes northward, and especially some snow going into northern Virginia and portions of Maryland on the front side of this Thursday before changing over to rain. And then this will continue to work up into the northern mid-Atlantic into Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And here comes that front on Friday. Again, super heavy rain on the front side for most areas. In the mid-Atlantic, it's going to be a lot more difficult to actually get back in snow because that cold air has to seep through the mountains. A lot of the times coming down the mountain, it's kind of a dry wind, which really helps to dry up the moisture before the temperatures drop enough for snow. But I think in the mountains, you'll definitely see some snow fly anywhere, from an inch to 3 inches here to western North Carolina, especially on the northwest flow or the northwestern facing slopes. And then probably, again, closer to 3 to 5 maybe here in the Virginias, especially if we can get that low pressure to form and then ride up here into these areas. But I still think, safe bet to see snow in these areas. And back in snow showers anywhere from Pittsburgh over to Philadelphia on the back side of this. All right, so last place we're going to look at here is New England. Pretty funny, well, not funny, I guess, but interesting forecast here in New England. It's kind of ironic to see so much rain with a storm this time of the year, especially whenever we're looking at the chance for pretty heavy snowfall in these regions not that long ago with this system. So again, Wednesday, pretty dry, even Thursday for most sections of New England. We will begin to see, though, rain moving in with snow on the front side, but it won't last too long, maybe a quick inch in some places before quickly changing to rain in these regions, and pretty heavy rain. You're really going to be getting a lot of flow off of the Atlantic here into Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts with super heavy rain and pretty gusty conditions as well in those areas. Chance of maybe some flurries on the backside or snow showers. I wouldn't count on it in a lot of these regions, but definitely some pretty strong lake effect snow here into New York and even Erie, Pennsylvania, and other areas into Ohio. But once that heavy rain moves out, going into Saturday morning and Friday night, the temperatures are going to really plummet. And as I talked about earlier, you're going to really want to be careful of the roadways going into your Saturday morning. There will likely be pretty widespread black ice with some leftover snow flurries through some of the region. But again, more importantly, a lot of that lake effect. So looking past this big system that's moving through this week, I don't want to talk too much about this because we're already going pretty long on this video. But we'll look at what could likely be maybe another system that tries to move through sections of the Midwest and maybe even affecting areas further south. So this is the EPS chance of 1 inch or greater of snowfall within a 24-hour period. So as you can see, this is the big system that moves through this week, going through the Midwest. And then as that moves out, chance of snow goes down pretty significantly through a big section of the east before we then get right after Christmas here into the 26th. You see maybe a system's going to try to dive south here into the Midwest and even the Ohio River Valley, and even some chances further south here. We'll see if maybe, just maybe, right now nothing's set in stone, but maybe we can try to get some kind of low to form here and phase off of this piece of energy coming out of the Midwest. and try to ride up the coast. But that is a very big question mark right now. And again, like we saw with last week, these things are never set in stone. But there is a bit of a signal there for maybe a chance of something to form. So that's all I've got for today. Of course, I will have another video out tomorrow, which is Wednesday. And by then, it'll be just about go time with this thing. So we'll try to look at some radar tomorrow, and it'll be an even better range for the close range models like the NAM and high resolution rapid refresh. But I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their Tuesday, and make sure you stay safe and warm the rest of this week.